Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 4 in the trailer jig series. Now I hope that most of you have been following along, but if you haven't, what I am attempting to do is take an old Four Winds boat trailer and convert it into a frame jig for a 65 to 68 Mustang. They basically share the same floor pan, and I'm using a 68 Mustang that I bought a while ago that appears to have a really good frame. So I'm using it kind of as a template. Now I've already created the rear mounts where the forward spring shackle or where the leaf spring attaches to the torque box, and I've created a secondary set of mounts where the steering box and the idler arm would attach. So those are in the previous video. Now, moving forward, I need to make the front supports that will attach to where the bumper brackets go. And then, of course, the rear section, which will be a variation of 2 mount points, let's say. So this is a drawing that I made. I don't know how clear that is, if you can see what I'm talking about. But for the rear, I'm going to have a permanent piece of 2x2 square tubing welded to the trailer frame. And on top of that, it will have a 3/4 inch threaded bolt, or threaded all-thread piece, that will go up into the original jig hole in the rear frame rail. And then there will be a secondary attachment to that, which will go to the rear shackle mount for the leaf spring. So that will it'll evolve a little bit as I move forward, but that's the plan. So let me show you what I plan to do on the front, and I've already kind of given an overview on this in the other videos, but let me show you what the plan is and a problem I may have run into that I need to address. Okay, so the plan is going to be take this piece of 1-inch square tubing, thick wall, and it'll become a mount point right there where the bumper bracket mounts. So there'll be 2 holes going through that. Then I will take this 2-inch square tubing, and that will be welded to the 1-inch square tubing and then set on top of this piece. And that piece will be welded to the trailer. Now that'll be lopped off. It won't be this long, only long enough to support this in the vertical position. And then there will be tabs on either side of that piece, just like that back there, for the mount that goes to where the steering box is. So let me show you a little problem. These bolt holes, these are factory, and you can see they're not centered on these original holes in the frame rail, and that could be a problem. Whenever you try to run a bolt in there, it is actually hitting the edge of the hole and makes it a little crooked, which may not be that big a concern, but I want to be able to use this as a guide, let's say, and if this hole is off on my template, that's not good for the rest of the build. So I will probably work on actually taking these loose, recentering them in the frame rail and welding them back on. I'm going to have a look at these. I think there is probably a plate on these. I can flex this and see it move. So I will grind this and try to find where that spot weld is or whatever. I want to relocate both of these and get them centered up. Now if I use this, which is a patch panel, where I have done this repair before, where I've sectioned in pieces, you can see these are nicely centered in the holes. I would like to think that any new frame rails or patches or anything like that should be more consistent with these than with those factory holes. So that's what I want to work on, is getting these holes taken care of, and then I'll build the rest of that assembly. Okay. I thought that maybe I could move those nut plates. I have this old frame rail left over, and looking inside, I can see now that they're both on kind of a plate. I don't know if I can get the light just right in there or not. They're both attached to a plate, and that plate appears to be a U-channel shape, and I don't know that I'll be able to move anything. Like, I'm assuming there's 2 spot welds here on the bottom. I can see those. I don't see any on the inside, and I don't see any on the outside. So what I might try to do, just to see, is on that car, drill these two spot welds out and see if I can't move that plate around. So it makes sense that they would put them on something that would keep them in the same location relative to each other, but yeah, that's going to take a little more planning. But I didn't know there are two spot welds though, so we'll see what I can do. Okay, I had to cheat a little bit. I couldn't get the plate to move, and I was kind of thinking it wouldn't move anyway, but what I did is I welded in a couple of nuts in the precise location that lines up with the bolts, as you can see here, going through this plate as a guide. So now I can also take this plate and use it as a reference for the bolt holes on the 1-inch square tubing. So all I did here was I drew a center line on my square tubing using a simple ruler, and then I took the plate, set it on top of that so that I could find the center line in the holes, and I also used the very edge as a reference point. The idea being that if things work out the way they should, and if, let's say, this piece is made accurately to that, this should stop in the same location at the front edge. So I'll just have to drill these holes and then figure out exactly where I want to cut this off. I know I want to leave the front long. This will be my center point where I weld, so it can be anywhere past that hole, about 1 inch. Okay, so it bolted in just fine, and I took a measurement to find the center line between these two bolt holes, and just to make it simple, I took a plumb bob because I need to locate this bottom one, and by doing it this way, it's really not that critical, I don't think, but I just like to have things as square as possible. So that puts it on the center of this piece. I measured from here back to my other locations to make sure I was index square this way. And what this allows me to do is draw some lines on the frame so I know where I need to be, and I can draw a line on the bottom of the beam. And that just gives me a reference of an angle that I need to cut it to. So along with getting these marks in place, I can take, basically I don't have a piece of 2-inch square tubing that's short enough, but I have this piece of 1 inch left over from the previous cut, and I can stack up a piece of 1 inch on the inside and the 1 inch on the outside, and that gives me an idea of how far out I want this piece to be. So if I want this to overhang that 2 inches just a little, I can leave it like that. Okay, I think it's time to weld the stuff together. So again, this will go down here, get welded to the bottom edge of the 2x2, and these things line up really well doing that. I do have to level this out slightly, just a little, so I'll have to lean that direction and then check for level this way, and I'm going to say it's good. Now here's the unique thing, and I want to share this. Somebody had asked me about when I leveled the car, did I use the rocker panels or the frame rails? And I've shown this in another video when I was doing the convertible, that the frame rail, if I remember correctly, actually angles down slightly. So if you'll notice, this pipe is square and level, but the angle of this pipe is slightly downhill. And I can put this on top, and this one is going one direction, put this on top of this one, and it is going another direction. So I'm confident with the way this is made, but I wanted to point that out because the implication is you should level it off of the frame rail, and I don't do that. I leveled it off of the rocker panel and the pinch weld, let's say, made that flat, and then honestly, as long as everything is indexed the same between this car and another car that I put on here, it really isn't going to make much difference. It should be all work out at the same, angles and dimensions. So anyway, just some information. Alright, now all I have left to do is drill a hole through this, and then that gives me a location for my bolt. I still may consider, I don't know yet, putting a piece of the angle iron out here, drilling a hole through both of these and using a guide pin to make sure everything's square, but it really shouldn't make much difference as long as I have the bolt welded in, or drilled in correctly. So the front is all welded together on both sides. Pretty happy with how that all looks. And like I said, I still have to drill the hole through here so that I can put a bolt in it. But yeah, I like it. Next phase is moving to the back and building that a little more complicated piece that I showed earlier. Okay. So I'm going to have to make this the end of the video. I did plan on making the front section and the rear section, but with the problem I had with those bolt holes where the bumper bracket fits, it took too long. And I didn't want the video to be super long because I know the next segment or the next part that I need to build is going to be more complicated than these other pieces. So there will be a part 5. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. There's also something else that has arrived at the shop that has me a little bit out of sequence. Not that I didn't plan on this, but give you a little sneak peek. Yep, the Bronco is here. So I need to get to work on that. Now I do not plan to get into this very much until I finish the frame jig, because I want to be able to roll that out of here and have my space. So I'll finish up that one. And also I have a video to do on a newer version of the Yes Welder MiG 205 DS. They sent me an updated version of that, so I'm trying to do a video comparison between the old version and the new version. So working on that as well. But there will be another frame jig video. Again, that'll be part 5, and that's all there is for now. So I want to thank you for watching, and if you would, leave a comment and a thumbs up on the video. And until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.